Um, uh, just a couple preliminary points to make. I want to review quickly the genesis of why we're doing a presentation like this. If you remember, some months ago, we did a survey of members to see what their area of interest were in future presentations. And that's the survey results that came back after we tabulated all of them, showed that, not surprisingly, pretty much all aspects of bowl turning were the number one topic of interest for our members. But the second most selected item was jigs and accessories for lathes, and we thought, you know, that's such a broad topic, it's difficult to know where to focus on. So we thought what we'd do is just do, as the first presentation in this area, a really broad overview of all kinds of jigs and accessories, including just some of the basic stuff for our newer members, because we have a lot of newer members. Some of the stuff that we're going to go over, particularly the first slides, it's very basic stuff, but so bear with us if you know this is all familiar to you. You know, this is primarily for the newer members who might not know, newer Turner members who might not know what some of these things are. We thought it'd be good to go through those. Also, keep in mind that what we're going to show here is the items that we're showing are not intended in any way to be an exhaustive representation of everything that's available on the market. We couldn't possibly do that. They're just representative samples of the general kinds of things that are available on the market. There are other brands and permutations of them that are available from various vendors. We've included at the end of the presentation a list of resources that include the websites of a lot of catalog vendors, a lot of manufacturers, things that you can just click on. We're going to make a PDF version of this presentation available on our website so you can download it yourself. All of the links that we're going to have on that PDF are active, so all you have to do is click on them. They'll take you right to those sites. We've tried to include, in addition to what these jigs and accessories are, as many pictures as we could find of the kinds of things you can make with them. Makes it a little more practical if you can see what you can actually do with some of these items. And so we try to include pictures of some of the cool things that you can make with some of these jigs and accessories, and also links to YouTube videos that explain in one way or another how to use some of these jigs or accessories. Going through all of the YouTube videos that could have been included here was a bit daunting because there are hundreds, and I had to weed through just a lot of, as you might well imagine, a lot of junk on YouTube to come up with what are a little over 100 video links that I've included here that you can entertain yourself for days on end if you watch all of them. I'm not going to tell you all of them are fantastic. Some of them are fantastic. Some are okay. Some are barely decent, but at least they illustrate one of the central points of the jig or accessory. So enjoy them as much as you can. Also, you're going to see on the next slide here, these are the general categories of items that I've tried to group them into. Don't beat me up over which ones are in which category. I had to put them someplace, depending on what you turn and how you turn. A particular item that I have as not being essential, maybe absolutely essential to you, that's fine. We had to put them someplace. So put them in your mind wherever you think they need to go. As I said in the first few slides, we're going to start off with some of the really basic stuff. So bear with me as we slog through those. It'll pick up a little bit until we get to the really cool jigs, where we're going to slow down a little bit more because some of those things are pretty cool. And then towards the end, it picks up again. So let's start off with the basic necessities category. This is the basic necessities, or at least what we tell our significant others. And as a result of doing this presentation, I can tell you I found some things I didn't even know were available on the market. So I have had to explain to my wife that there were certain things that are now necessities in my shop that will be coming in the mail soon, that I, as I said, had previously had not known even existed. So this was a great benefit to me to do this presentation because I ordered some cool stuff. But anyway, these are just some pictures of my shop. You can see I got a lot of jigs and accessories hanging around, and so that's why I got nominated to do this, because I just can't resist jigs and accessories. One of my difficulties as a turner is that, unlike some folks that specialize in a particular area of turning, I'm pretty eclectic in what I turn. I'll turn a little bit of everything. And that's great in one respect, it's bad in another respect. And the respect in which it's bad is that all jigs and accessories appeal to me because I like turning all kinds of things. So I can't weed out a lot of stuff that I'm not interested in because sadly I'm interested in most of it. But anyway, let's get on with some of the basic necessities that you need for turning. And what we're going to focus on here for those newer turners at first are different ways that you will hold work on the lathe, starting out with holding it between centers. We're going to look at drive centers and live centers and the various kinds of those that are available out there. A lot of us get stuck in a rut of using specific ones, but there are lots of different ones out there. And so we want to familiarize the newer turners or refamiliarize some of the experienced turners with some of the kinds of drive centers that are out there. And so let's get into that. And you may want to, oh, excuse me, I hit the wrong button there. You may want to do a full screen on your device, whatever it is. There is an option if you click on that view option in the upper right hand corner, you can click full screen. It makes it a little bit bigger if you want. All right, first off, obviously one of the first things you need before you put anything on the lathe is a tool rest. And so we thought it'd be a good idea just to take a look at some of the options available in tool rests. Again, this is just a representative sample of the dozens and dozens and dozens of tool rests that are out there. And also we'll take a little bit look on the next slide on options for storing tool rests, because that can become a problem the more tool rests you get. One of the things you really don't want to do, and I know I see this all the time in YouTube videos, is people throwing their tool rests in a drawer and banging them against each other. They scream in pain when you do that. Not a good idea. One of the things you want to do is prevent them from getting dinged up. And particularly on the top edge, that's what you're primarily concerned about. And throwing them into a drawer isn't a good idea. So coming up with a mechanism to store them and keep them from banging against each other can be a bit challenging if you have a lot of them. I just put it on a lolly column beside my lathe, and you'll see some other options in the next slide. A lot of different options in sizes. You'll see here, I've got 3-inch, 6-inch, 9-inch, 12-inch. The one that came with my Powermatic lathe is a 14-inch. I also have a 22-inch. You'll see that one over here, made by Advanced Lathe Tools. That's Steve Sinner, the owner of Advanced Lathe Tools. He made this at the request of Mike Hoselick, who many of you know as not only a phenomenal turner, but also the creator of the Hoselick handle system. He wanted Steve to produce a particularly long tool rest that he wouldn't have to keep moving as he's turning handles. And this one turned out being fantastic. The concern was that, obviously right over the post, it's particularly stable, but you would be concerned once you get way out over here to the left or to the right, whether it's going to flex too much on you. This thing is just as rock solid way out to the edges here as it is right over the tool post. Steve did an amazing job of manufacturing this thing. It's a great tool rest. He also makes this little tiny one, this little tiny 3-inch one, which is fantastic for getting into really tight areas. And he makes this as a dedicated finial rest, which is, and don't go by this picture. This is just a setup shot. I just threw something on the lathe and put this next to it. Isn't the way I'd actually turn that finial, but you can see how small this is, and this is it from the other end. So you can see how small that is to facilitate your wrapping your finger up underneath it, as many of us do when we're turning a finial. You can wrap your finger up underneath it and wrap it around the other side, rather than have to make do with one of the other tool rests that aren't designed to do this. This one makes it really, really simple to do something like that. Other tool rests available, box rests here. These two pictures are both of the robust box rest. A new one on the market that just came out, I think just a week or two ago, is this 9-inch box rest from Simple Wood Turning Tools. Pretty handy if you're doing very deep hollow forms like this. I do a lot of staved vessels where the lower portion of them is staved, the upper portion is segmented, but the lower portion is staved, so you have to turn that on the inside all at once. This is really handy to get way down into a lower portion of a staved vessel. Really, really decent thing. Obviously, the other more traditional tool rest for bolt turning, a robust J rest. A lot of manufacturers make J rests and S rests like this one here. One-way makes a fairly traditional inside the bowl and outside the bowl rest. Robust makes these as well. Again, very, very standard tool rests that many of us use. One of the issues about tool rests are in these two pictures here, whether to use shaft collars or not. Can be a bit controversial as to whether shaft collars are used or not. I will tell you that I don't use them at all for actually setting the height at which I really want that tool rest to finally be. I use it simply as a reference point. If you have a tool rest that you only use at one specific height with one specific tool, it's fantastic. You know, put your tool rest in, clamp that bad boy on there, and you're set to go every time you use it. But like most of us, I tend to use them differently depending on the tool and the circumstance. What I do is I took, I think I took this tool rest, the 9-inch robust, which is the one I use probably 80% of the time for all the turning I do. And I set this to the very lowest point that I would ever use it at with any tool. And that's my really heavy duty round nose bowl scraper. That's a really thick tool. And so I set this at the very lowest level I would ever use any tool rest at. And I set it there, and then I set all of my tool rests, the ones at least that I'm using shaft collars on, I set them to that exact same height, so that, and again, that has nothing to do with, other than that one tool, has nothing to do with the height at which I'd actually use it, but it gives me a fixed reference point so that I know on any one of my tools, when the shaft collar is bottomed out there, that's exactly the point that I know I have to make an adjustment to get it up to where I need for a specific tool. I don't have to guess along the whole shaft where it is. Everyone, I know the height of the tool rest is at a specific point above here. And so I know, like, for a particular tool with a particular rest, I know I got to raise that 1/8 of an inch off of the banjo, or 1/4 of an inch. You know, it just makes it easier for quick visual reference. That's just the way I use it. You can use them for entirely different reasons, or not use them at all. They're not inexpensive. I think depending on the manufacturer, they run anywhere from 10 to 20 bucks a piece. So, you know, it can be a little pricey to add them to a ton of them. As I say, I don't have them on all my tool rests, but on the ones that I use frequently and want a quick visual reference for, you know, I put them on there. Like, I don't put them on a finial rest because every one is specific to a specific finial. But you know, again, you make your own decision as to whether you want to use those or not. All right. Tool rest storage ideas. These all came off the AW forum. Pictures that other folks have posted of how they store their tool rests. You know, good ideas. You can take a look at those. This guy's is down here, obviously. You can see his tool rest stored way down here. But, you know, pick whatever method works for you to try to keep them from getting dinged up. This is this little item here is a reducer that allows you simply put this reducer in your, and this is a reducer that goes from a 1-inch to a 5/8 inch, so that you can put this in your 1-inch banjo hole and use your, if you happen to have a second lathe like I do, my initial lathe I still have, it's a 1221 jet, and it has 5/8 inch posts on the tool rest. And it's nice to be able to grab one of those one time if I need a specific size that I don't have in the 1-inch. So you can grab one of these, just use that reducer and put it in, with the caveat that be careful. See that slot right there? Depending on how your clamping system works in your banjo, you may have to turn this in a specific way to get it to actually clamp. So just be cognizant of that before you use it. But handy to have, and pretty inexpensive addition to your arsenal of little things to grab to use on your lathe. All right, drive centers. Drive centers, there's obviously a huge array of drive centers out on the market. What we thought we'd do is just show people some of the basic types of drive centers that are out there. These are just examples. Some of them that I have, others are just pictures from catalogs. The most common one are the more traditional prong centers, these that you see down here. There are 2-prong. These are all 4-prong. One of the Nova Jumbo is a 4-prong. This is a huge 2-prong one-way if you're turning, I guess, a small tree and with our tree stump anyway. You know, a ginormous 2-prong spur. The more common these days from the British turners Our 6-prong centers, like this one that is Axminster down here. You see a lot of the British companies, Sorby, Axminster, they're all hawking a lot of 6-prong centers now. One of the ones that Joe uses a lot is this Bestwood Tools Texas Spur Drive Center. Again, a big honking center, drive center that has 6 prongs on it, so handy. Another general type of center that you see, and some of these, forgive me, I'm giving you all of the names that you see them by in various catalogs. I have always known this as a steb center, this type of front on the drive center. It's a steb center, also called a safety center. Some catalogs call it crown, some call it multi-prong. Unlike most of these, which have, some have removable or even adjustable depth center points, some don't, like this one is permanent. All these are permanent, they can't be adjusted. These two can be, the depth of the center points can be adjusted or removed. These can't be adjusted or removed, but they are spring-loaded. The center point is spring-loaded, and the teeth, as you can see, are much more shallow than the spur drive centers. And they're called safety centers because if you have these, if you're using these generally on both the drive center and your live center, and you'll see a live center version of that in later slides, these won't cause such a severe catch at all. The wood will simply spin. It'll spin against those teeth and spin right around them. It'll break loose and spin, and you won't have such a violent catch, particularly if you're trying to learn how to turn with a skew. Really handy little things to use if you're in any way concerned about it. Frankly, I use them a lot just because I find them convenient. And I don't recall ever having had one stop a piece of wood. But not that I'm that kind of turner, but they're great centers, and I use them a lot just as regular centers. Another kind of center, in addition to spur drive centers and steb or safety centers, is a cup, ring, or friction drive. Again, depending on the manufacturer, you can have any of those various names. This one is from Axminster. Another picture of it is right here, a close-up from the front. You can see why it's called. It's got a little cup in here, and it's in the shape of a ring. It's got a permanent center point. It doesn't protrude terribly far. You can just see over here, just a very little tiny protrusion there. Again, this is very much a safety center as well, because if there's a catch, you don't have big spurs digging into the piece that will cause a violent catch. It'll just spin on these on this ring right here, hence the name ring or friction drive. It drives by friction as opposed to driving by having, you know, these spurs dug into the piece that you're spinning on the lathe. This just spins by friction, and drives it by friction, and will spin generally if you have a catch. Interestingly, Robust makes the standard center that they give with their lathes is a cup drive or friction drive or ring drive. It also, interestingly, is the only one of the only drive centers that has a threaded portion. This is threaded 3/4 by 10, which you'll see is also the same threading that's used on many of the live centers. They're the only ones, other than there's a little rubber Chucky drive on the later side that is also threaded that way, but very unusual. You can see this is also a ring drive at the top with a little point, and this has a bowl drive attachment, which essentially just makes a larger ring drive on it, a larger friction drive. This is the assembled piece here. Again, very handy to have. Other types of drive centers, very quickly, these are called dead centers. These have nothing but a 60-degree point on them. That's all. A typical use for them these days, not really used a whole lot, but a typical use for them is up here in the upper right corner for applying CA finish to a pen blank so that you don't CA glue your bushings to your drive center or live center. They're very easy to get CA off of. Again, not wide usage, but they're available if you happen to need them. Another type of drive center is called a light pull center. This is the use of it over here in the second picture in the upper right corner. How you would use a light pull center as a drive center. As you'll see, it's got stepped areas on it. that would equate to the various sizes of holes that you would put in the front of that light pole. So depending on the size hole you need, you would sit it at one of those various steps to hold it, and again, drive it by friction. So one of the things you do now, just to mention for a moment, this type of stem center, as you'll see, this is shaped very differently. All of the rest of these have MT2 shaped arbors on them. This one obviously does not. This one is not intended to seat inside the MT2 area of your spindle. It is designed to fit, as you'll see in the lower right corner down here, it is designed to fit in a chuck. So that's a chuck mountable steb or safety center. Who uses that? Largely production turners who don't want to take the time to take the chuck on and off the lathe too much if they're doing repetitive turnings. They'll simply throw this in, turn with it as the drive center, and then take it out, and then use the chuck for whatever purpose they're going to use the chuck for. You will occasionally see some turners stick one of these standard MT2 arbor drive centers in a chuck. That's a big no-no. You are not supposed to do that. They are not intended to do that. No manufacturer ever recommends that you do that. Axminster makes a Morse taper carrier that if you really feel the need to do that, you can order one of these that mounts into the chuck, and you can then fit any of these MT2 arbored carriers centered into that Morse taper carrier. I don't think I've ever seen anybody use one of these, but anyway, if you're inclined to do it, it's available to you. Another type of drive center, very briefly, that is available, we'll talk about this when we get to long hole boring, is this counterbore drive center. You would use that if you're doing, like, a long hole that you're boring for a lamp. That's the type of drive center that you would use for lining up that hole. So, all right, that's drive centers in a nutshell. Tailstock live centers. Again, these are just representative samples of the types of live centers that are out there, and there's a ton more than this, obviously, but these are just some samples. This is a robust drive center, Nova. This one is used, I think, by all of these, by Powermatic, by Jet, by Laguna. The same one is provided on all of those lathes. These you can see are differently configured because they have different options that are available to them. The robust and the Powermatic are they have threaded ends. These are threaded 3/4 by 10, and that accepts just a whole ton of additional accessories that we're going to be talking about in a minute. Very, very handy to have these. The Nova is not threaded, but it still has what's called an MT2 short arbor hole in it. You can use these accessories that come with it to give you a long point, a little bit shorter point, or just a flat point, then with a short MT2 arbor. Or this is a slip over cover that goes over the top of the Nova to give you other options to provide tailstock support. The Powermatic one, there are other accessory points available on it. This point is removable. You can replace it with these differently configured points if you need it. This is the little shaft that is provided with this Powermatic Jet Laguna version. The robust, you'll see, does not have that. This hole has nothing to do with a rod going into it. The Powermatic and Jet differs from the robust in one important way, and it's why I like the robust a whole lot better, is that in order to change an accessory on the Powermatic, you have to stop this center portion, the threaded portion, from spinning, because it spins independently of the body. So you have to stick this in this hole and rotate it until it goes all the way through to stop this from spinning. To me, that's a giant pain in the neck. The robust is not that way. The threaded portion and the body of this are all one piece. So all you have to do is hold on to this and unthread or thread whatever accessory you're going to put on it. Way more convenient than having to grab this little tiny rod, which, as you can see, has been bent in 17 different ways over the years. But anyway, those are just options. That the one way, I'll be honest, I'm not positive which the one way version of this. I'm not sure whether that uses a rod or not. But you have to decide for yourself which one's most convenient for you. Other types of tailstock live centers, and none of these have the same interchangeable noses that the Powermatic and the Robust have. It does use the rod. Oh, okay, thanks, Scott. The spring-loaded center points on these, just as on the drive centers. These are the safety the tailstock live center, steb center, safety center, whatever you want to call them. This is the most traditional one that comes with a lot of lathes, just a standard old 60-degree live center. This one I think came standard with my Jet 1221. This does have a removable point. It is also a cup or friction drive. There's no teeth on that. This is the Axminster live center version that matches the other one you'll see here is the ring centers, both the drive center and the tailstock live center together. These are the Sorby step centers, the one we saw on the drive center page, and here is this one over here, the tailstock live center. This center here is a mandrel saver, typically used when you are turning pen blanks or the things that work on a mandrel that sticks out from the drive center. And this encompasses the rod, usually a 7mm rod that this goes around, and it's called a mandrel saver because it hopefully saves the mandrel from getting bent rather than just sticking it out there and holding it in place with something like this. It can get bent pretty badly. If you hold it with this, it's pretty good. This is a pen blank live center. You'll see it down here. You use it in conjunction with this is a different kind of drive center just for pen blanks, where you're essentially turning between centers. You put whatever bushing you need for a particular pen blank, one on either end, and then put your pen blank there, as opposed to using a long pipe mandrel, if you will, and putting multiple pen blanks on it all at one time. This you do one blank at a time in between centers. Kind of handy to have. You'll note here that we're starting to get into areas where you'll see these are the YouTube links. They're here on the PDF that we'll make available. All you have to do is click on that. It will take you right to that particular YouTube video. So handy to get to once you download that PDF version of it. All right. Live center attachments. These are cone centers. Not a lot of folks use cone centers a lot as a segmented turner. We use them quite a bit. You'll see on these two over here, we use them quite a lot. This is pretty much a standard 4-inch cone center that comes with some of the higher end live centers. These two are both 60 degrees. This one's 45 degrees. Steve Sinner with Advanced Lathe Tools sells this set. That's that, high molecular weight stuff, really durable stuff. So these can be used in either direction. You can either do it this way or flop it around if you need a large flat, essentially a press, if you will, using your lathe for a press. These work great. These are all 45-degree cones as opposed to these at 60 degrees. And a little later, you'll see some larger centers that you can make in the shop that we use for a variety of purposes in segmenting. So larger than most people have any rational use for. Other types of live center attachments, rubber Chuckies. I love rubber Chuckies. I live in a world of rubber Chuckies. I use them for all kinds of different things. They're very handy. You can use them as friction drives. You'll see this is the only other drive center shaft that I know is available with a 3/4 by 10 thread. You can put any of these Chuckies on here to make it a friction drive center. All of these are threaded on the back, 3/4 by 8. So they'll fit on the live centers that are equipped with the threaded ends, like the one-way, the Robust, and the Powermatic and Jet version. So you can use these rubber Chuckies for lots of different things. They make special finial Chuckies. These are specifically designed to use with finials. Those are, I always forget the name of them, oh, good Lord, you know what they are, folks. I'll think of it in a minute. But anyway, you can see here the
Collets.
No, they're not collets. They're what go inside what are inside here?
Oh, bearings, like
Bearings. Yes, forgive me. Jeez, couldn't think of the name. These have different size bearings, a little bit thicker one here, a little small one here. And so they spin inside the Chucky. The bearing, the finial bears against the bearing there and spins. So it gives you stability. Once you start turning that and get the end done, you just simply bring this up and hold it against there, and that gives you a lot of support when you're turning the rest of the finial. Works pretty well. Does it leave a little bit of mark on the end of it? Yes, but it literally, you can take it off with a 240 grade sandpaper. It's not a deep mark at all. Very well designed. They work really well. But all that having been said, I can't overlook the original gangster rubber jam chuck that we use for those kinds of things, the old tennis ball, as you'll see right here. They work fantastically if you're doing a goblet or something. Rubber Chuckies are good for it, but if you don't have one of those around, grab an old tennis ball. They work great. Other live center attachments, we can't go into great detail here. There's a whole host of these kinds of things. They're different varieties. They're kinds that stick in, like that Nova one I told you about that has that MT2 short arbor hole in there. You can turn something that fits in there and custom fit it. You can do slip-on cones like Carl Ford does. Carl, go to his website sometime and take a look, carlford.us. He's really an interesting guy. He produces all kinds of drawings like this to give you an idea of things you can do. These all slip over the top of the ends of whatever live center you have to have. He's using both robust one way and the precision machine one. I think that's sold by Craft Supplies, if I'm not mistaken. Or you can make types that are threaded to fit yourself. This is a Alan Stratton video that shows you how to custom make ones that thread on, or you can buy ones like this one on Etsy. That's a machinable live center attachment you can buy on Etsy. If you don't want to do any of these things, if any of this is just too much work, you can go old school and use Raffin discs, which are these little tiny discs that I use on occasion. If the particular project I'm working on calls for it. If you want to hold something in place and don't have anything else readily available as of the size and shape you want, just make a little disc and you can hold it in place with a variety of things, including a pretty traditional 60-degree live center. And this video shows Raffin, who is, for those of you who don't know him, is one of the gods of bowl turning, who has written quite a few books on turning bowls. He's quite a character in his advancing years. He does a lot of videos now, way more than he ever used to do. One of them is on making these little Raffin discs. I call them Raffin discs. I don't think he does, but I know them as that. And they work really well. It just holds, it puts tailstock pressure on without marking the piece at all. And you can make them really, really tiny, really large, whatever you need. Pretty easy to make. So handy. All right, another method of holding work on your lathe, in addition to between centers, we've talked about a whole lot of different centers. Another way is 4-jaw scroll chucks. Again, this is an area where there is just an overwhelming array of different brands, sizes, jaw configuration options. No way we could address that. You could spend multiple sessions discussing all of these. This is just to give you an array. This is some of the chucks that I have. As you can tell, I hate, and I repeat the word hate, changing jaws. So I tend to buy a lot of chucks. This is some of the ones that I have. These vary in size. This is a little record power SE1 2-inch mini chuck. Joe has the little bit shorter version of the same thing. Really handy. You got a small project, you don't want a lot of steel spinning around your fingers. This is a really small, beautifully built chuck by Record Power. They go up in size from there. These are the most traditional types of or sizes of chucks. Most of these are Nova, some of them ones in a Record Power. I think that's a SC4 chuck, one of them is, but they're all about 4-inch in diameter chucks. That's a pretty traditional size for a standard chuck. The body of the chuck is about 4 inches. You can turn pretty large pieces with a 4-inch chuck. There are some sites which say you can turn, I think Nova says you can turn a 20-inch bowl blank with a 4-inch chuck. I would not, but I'm chicken, I guess. I would want a larger chuck than that. But you can still turn a pretty good size bowl blank with a 4-inch chuck with all these different bowl or chuck options. If you want to move it up a little bit, There's an intermediate size not shown here, and I'll get to that in a minute, but the next size shown is a 5-inch chuck. This is a Vicmark VM120. The body of this is 5 inches in diameter. You can turn pretty much anything with this. It's a really good chuck, very high quality chuck. Jaws are great. Use different mechanisms to size and label their jaws than does Nova and Record Power and some of the others, but really good chuck. Another similar version of that is the Nova Titan. This is also a 5-inch chuck. Again, a very heavy duty chuck, similar to the one-way Stronghold. That's a 5-inch chuck. I don't have one of those, so I can't show that one, but and I think there's a fourth brand out, Hurricane, I think makes a 5-inch chuck. As far as I know, those are the only 5-inch chucks on the market. This is a 4-inch chuck, but I just put it there to illustrate, even with a 4-inch chuck, you can get pretty big jaws. This is 130 millimeter. You know, this is 5+ inches. So you can get pretty big jaws on a 4-inch chuck. But you can also put those here on a 5-inch chuck. If you're looking for how large can dovetail jaws get, these, obviously you see these 25, 35, 50, 75. You know, those are fairly traditional. They go up to 8 7/8 inches. This is a Vicmark 8 7/8 inch dovetail jaw. That's a big honking set of jaws. You can turn a really big piece with that. I don't think I've ever seen anybody turn with it, but anyway, it's available. The largest chuck here is the Vicmark VM150. This is a 6-inch chuck. It weighs 11 pounds. That's not a joke. It weighs 11 pounds. You need a forklift to get it up onto the spindle. It is a behemoth of a chuck. If you were to ask me why I bought it, I'll have to be honest with you. I have absolutely no idea. I've yet to, as you can see from the rather pristine condition of the chuck jaws, I don't think I've ever used it for anything. It's just so darn big. I haven't had a need for it. It's there if I need it, but I haven't found a ginormous tree stump that I want to turn on my lathe. But it's a massive piece of equipment. If ever anybody needs one, give me a call. I'll be happy to loan it to you. You can spin that bad boy around your lathe and hope for the best. The other kinds of chucks shown here, these are shark jaws and step jaws. If you watch Richard Raffin and Tomislav Tomasek videos, which I love, those guys are both great. There's a lot of links to their videos here on this presentation. These are their favorite jaws. They tend to use these as production turners, or at least Raffin is a former production turner. Tomasek still is. They use these jaws all the time. Very handy to have. Terrific. You'll see a lot of reference in recent videos to O'Donnell jaws. Lots of turners are using O'Donnell jaws, which are just kind of the British version of long nose jaws. The long nose jaws that we traditionally have here, you'll see these over here. They are I think about 2 inches in diameter. The O'Donnell jaw options from Axminster go down to I think about 1 inch. So if you're looking to have a little bit more room to make the area that you're turning more accessible to you than having just a big set of jaws with a big edge of the chuck right up next to you. This gets it a little further away from the chuck and angles it so that you can get your hands in there a little bit better. Same concept as with long nose jaws. This is an interesting way to use long nose jaws to mount inside a bowl if you're doing a second turn on a rough turn bowl blank. Kind of an interesting way to do it. A lot of times we use a little bit wider jaws and spin them out here. If you've got more thickness available to you down here, maybe you want to do it down here and use the long nose jaws. Kind of a neat idea that Nova had in their catalog for using them. One of the questions that I put in here is one you see eternal debate on up here in the upper left corner is to use spindle washers or not with chucks, or with anything for that matter, but anything that where a spindle washer would be necessary. I will tell you from my perspective, and this is just me talking, I never use spindle washers except in one circumstance, and that is if what I am trying to mount has a gap. If there is a gap, then if I tighten it all the way as far as it'll go, and there's still a gap between this mounting surface right here and what I'm trying to mount, then I'll put a spindle washer on there to close up that gap, because you don't want there to be any gap. But if there isn't a gap, I would suggest not to use a spindle washer for one important reason. I know people use them because it makes it a little bit easier to take chucks off. They get stuck, if you will. The reason I don't use them is because you'll see a little bit later, there's a device you can get, a dial indicator that will show you run out, how much run out you get with different types of things mounted onto your spindle. And I will tell you, there is a measurable amount of run out that comes from these spindle washers not compressing evenly when you tighten them on. You will get far more run out putting a spindle washer on and then your chuck than if you just put the chuck on by itself. Now, is it still a lot of run out? No, it's not a lot. But every little thing you put on, in addition to the main thing you have to put on, any adapter, any spindle washer, any other device or thickness of item that you put on, has the potential to increase run out. We'll be talking about run out a lot as we go through some of these slides. So the general consensus among many turners is not to use these unless you absolutely have to. Other turners swear by them because it makes it easier to get something off the lathe. And we'll talk about removing things from the lathe in a minute. But anyway, you make your own choice as to whether you want to use it or not. If you get a dial indicator and measure it, you'll see why I don't typically do it, but everybody makes their own choice. So all right, I just included these charts in here because they were available from these manufacturers. I don't know if they're of use to anybody, but I thought, well, I'll put them in. It shows you the maximum expansion and contraction points of these are Vicmark and these are Nova. I wouldn't say these would be applicable to any other brand. These are very brand specific. Everybody's chucks differ in their configuration and their specific sizes. You'll see some manufacturers, like Nova, they refer to them as 50 millimeter. And some manufacturers call a 50 millimeter set of jaws as 50 millimeters when it's opened just enough to make it in the shape that it was before the set of jaws were cut into quarters. Nova doesn't do that. I have measured all of my Nova jaws, and if they say it's a 50 millimeter jaw, when you close that set of jaws as tight as they will go, that's 50 millimeters. So they use a little bit different mechanism. Vicmark, on the other hand, doesn't even do it by millimeters. They call it, particular kinds of jaws. No, I'm sorry, it's not Vicmark, it's Axminster. They use like number 2 jaws or A jaws or B jaws or C jaws. Different manufacturers use different nomenclature for what their jaws are called. So I wouldn't use these for any other brand. So, but if you have these specific brands of jaws, you can use these charts, and they should be in the information you got with the chucks, but we tend to misplace those things. So I thought I'd put them in there. Chuck keys, pretty straightforward. All kinds of different chuck keys. These are the standard 8 millimeter ones for the smaller kinds of chucks. This is a shop made one out of a big Allen wrench, and a YouTube video from Thomas Eck on how to do those. Pretty straightforward. You'll see these long ones. I have a long 8 millimeter and a long 10 millimeter. Those are really useful if you're using a chuck to mount a particularly large piece that's right up against the chuck, and you can't get something as short as one of these up above it to be able to spin it all the way around. Makes it really handy, and they're available from Amazon. This brand is available on Amazon. They're really good for this particular purpose. This is an Axminster chuck. This is a square drive. It's the only one I know that's square drive. Interesting. You'll see me mention Axminster a lot. That's a British manufacturer. I love what they do. Their equipment these days is fantastic. Going back to the chucks for a minute, they have their SK114 chuck, which isn't here, is in between these 4 inches and the 5-inch chucks. Their SK114, the 114 is millimeters. It's 114 millimeters wide. That's just under 4.5 inches. So it's an intermediate chuck between the 4-inch and the 5-inch. But it'll turn, from my use of it, it'll turn anything that Vicmark will do. A beautiful chuck. It is milled out of a solid billet of stainless steel. Most of these are steel, but not stainless steel. They're chrome plated steel. Axminster is one of the few that makes them out of solid billets of stainless steel. Really good jaws, really good chucks, with a good selection of jaws with them as well. So, all right. How do you store all that stuff? These are just some ideas that you find all around the internet of, you know, you can store chucks this way. They make all these different things, either sell metal ones or you can 3D print these things, you know, screw them onto the wall and hold your chucks that way, or do them. This is what I do. This is just a shelf that I put pegs in. I put pegs in and hold the chucks on those pegs, at least the ones that will fit there. The rest of them are in a drawer. So you can find whatever way you want that works for you to store all of the little things that we've been talking about, all your drive centers, live centers, adapters, chucks, all of this stuff. It's a nightmare to find a place to store it all, but here's some ideas that we found. Spanner wrenches that you use, spanner wrenches and Tommy bars. Depending on the kind of chuck you have, not too many Tommy bar chucks like this one in the lower right hand corner. Not too many of those left around, although there are still manufacturers that make them. One Way still makes one. But most of them are, you know, you tighten using one of the wrenches that we were talking about before. This to get the chuck off of the lathe, or to loosen it if you're talking about collet chuck here. A lot of different types that are around. This is probably one of the more traditional kind. This is what came with the Powermatic lathe. I don't really use that one because it's really heavy. This one works just fine for most purposes. But again, depending on the chuck, you may have to use a different mechanism, either a really thin Tommy bar or you use this kind that has just a little hook on it. Same with this one. This is for the record power chuck. These are plumber's wrenches that oddly work really good. If you don't have any other kind of spanner wrench around, one of these, you know, if you happen to have a plumber's wrench around, works like a charm. Or if it's designed to work with a Tommy bar, even though one of these little ends here, pointed ends, will fit, if you know, even though it'll fit into the hole like in this one down here, you're better off using a Tommy bar that fits that hole tightly, because these will kind of ding up those holes. They don't fill them fully. You're better off using the Tommy bar if you have one that will fit it correctly. So, all right. Another common debate is to buy chucks with inserts or direct thread. I'm a big direct thread person if they make it. Not all manufacturers make all versions of their chucks with direct thread. I think it's much better to have it. Why? Well, again, because of the runout issue. The one on the left, this you'll see here, this is an insert. There's a separately machined piece of metal that goes inside another machined piece of metal. Well, when you put two machined pieces of metal together, there's always a little tolerance built in when they're cutting the threads on those pieces. And so you have a little bit of runout that's added with every additional piece you put in. This is machined all in one piece. And so it's much easier to use a direct thread piece. Not easier. It's better in that you have a little less runout. But they don't always make every chuck in direct thread, except for one manufacturer. Not surprisingly, Axminster. They are now moving to all direct thread for that exact reason, because they have recognized, if you watch their videos, they say we've recognized the runout issue. It's a real live thing, and we want to try to limit that as much as possible. So we're moving to all direct thread for all of their chucks. I don't think any other manufacturer has done that with all of them yet, but we'll see. So anyway, you decide which one you want to buy. This is just a little public service notice about how to remove a chuck that is stuck on the spindle, and how you typically do it, and how you shouldn't do it. This is the way many of us do it, and I'm one of the bigger offenders. If the chuck is really tightly on that spindle and I've got this chuck key out there because I was just using it to take the piece off, I'll leave that in there, lock the spindle, and tap this handle up here and do it, you know, and loosen the chuck. It's a terrible thing to do, because what is stuck on the spindle? Is the chuck stuck on the spindle? No, the chuck isn't stuck. The insert is stuck. Again, this only applies to chucks with inserts. The insert is what's stuck on the spindle. So when you're doing this, when you're yanking on this thing, what you're doing is pulling that chuck against the grub screw, and hopefully you have used the grub screws to hold the insert into the chuck. but you're loosening that ever so slightly. How do I know that? Because I had them come loose eventually from doing this repeatedly. Now I don't do this anymore. I do this either with a spanner wrench if it's that type of insert, or with a Tommy bar like this one if it's this type of insert. You loosen it from the insert, not from the chuck, because this way you're not going to loosen that connection that the grub screw has, holding it tightly against the threads of the chuck. So, or vice versa, whatever it is, it's holding the threads of the insert against the chuck. So, you know, just keep that in mind. I know it's a hard habit to break. It took me a while to get out of the habit of doing it. So, again, just a public service announcement. All right, spindle adapters and extenders, MT2 extenders. This advisory in lower right corner is, again, remember, adapters and extenders increase runout. Anytime you are putting different pieces of metal, machine pieces together, you are increasing runout as opposed to them being, you know, machined all at one time. These are various adapters that take you from one thread size to another, depending on what chuck size you may have. Just as an example, this is a collet chuck that is a 1x8 thread for my smaller lathe. If I want to use that on the bigger lathe, I use an adapter that takes it from a 1x8 thread to a 1¼ x 8, so I can use it on right here. I can use it on my larger lathe. The reverse is also true. This is a chuck that is designed with 1¼ x 8, and I want to use it on my 1x8 smaller lathe spindle. I use an adapter which takes it down from the 1¼ x 8 to 1x8, and you can use it like here. You know, use that larger threaded chuck on it. But again, you're in both of these instances, you're increasing the runout a little bit more than it would be if you were using this straight on the lathe that it was originally intended for, lathe's thread size that it was intended for. If you are, for example, reverse chucking a bowl and you want to put the bowl blank that's on a chuck on your tailstock, there's two ways you can do it. You can do it certainly this way, using your live center with one of these adapters. It's this one up here that converts it from the 3/4 by 10 that's on the end of the live center to a 1¼ by 8 that will fit in the back of the chuck. But again, this is already a piece with moving parts in it, and you're adding another separately machined piece to this. And if you were to measure the runout of a chuck put on the tailstock with this assembly, as opposed to using one of these static non-spinning reverse chucking adapters that are machined all out of all in one piece, which do you think is going to be less runout? It's going to be this one every time. This will give you a little bit less runout. Again, is it a huge amount of difference? No, but is it some? Yeah, it certainly is. So if you want to reduce it as much as possible, that's the choice you have to make. A couple other things that are available, the 1¼ inch spindle extender. If you want to get something a little further away from the headstock, you can use a spindle extender. They make these in all sizes, depending on whatever thread size you happen to have. If you want to get it further away from the tailstock or get deeper into a bowl blank, you can use an MT2 extender. That's this one up here. And this is the key, the wedge that allows you to get whatever you have put into that MT2 socket to get it out, because it won't, the only thing that'll get out when you retract this is the extender. It won't detach the extender from whatever piece you put in there. So you need this key to go in to knock out whatever it is you put in. But anyway, these are available if you need to get a little bit deeper inside. If you got a bowl blank, you really need to get some tailstock support deep inside something, you know, this is a way to do it if you want to. All right. Screw chucks and wood berm screws. Again, all sorts of different screw chucks, some of them professionally made, commercially made, others shop made. You can see the different varieties here. This one is mounted in a chuck. This is from Axminster, which you would simply mount in a chuck. And these mount on spindles. This mounts in an arbor. The most traditional one that many of us use is this kind. It's mounted inside a chuck, but you can see how far this sticks out. That's way more than you need. Generally, you know, you only need 5, 6, 7 threads to hold a piece in place. I'm most comfortable with 7. Some people go down as low as 5, but this is obviously this one here is way more than that. You don't need to go that deeply inside. So Richard Raffin came up with a chuck collar that you can turn. where the surface of this is just slightly proud of the chuck jaws, so that the piece that you're mounting will come up against here and give you a broader mounting surface. But again, that doesn't help you with the depth of the chuck, or the depth of the screw rather. You have to then add to that. And if you want to increase the bearing surface, that's great, but that's, as I said, half the problem. That's the reverse side of the chuck collars. You can see what it looks like. You need to add some of these spacer discs to shorten the amount of threads that you're bearing deep into your bowl blank. So you can use discs of various thicknesses. And again, a video that shows the various thicknesses here. This is a thin one. Again, this is without a shaft collar. You see how much wobble room you might get with that. That's why Raffin likes the chuck collars if he's going to use anything that's that particularly wide. So again, you do it that way, or you can make yourself one like this one down here, which is a shop made, mounted on a faceplate. You simply mount the screw from the backside, mount the screw in that way, and you got nice wide support, and it's the right length all the time. So you can do it shop made that way as well. All right, waste and glue blocks. These are just some of the ones that I use. I make them all different ways. I use faceplates. I use epoxy mounted nuts that are embedded into holes drilled in the back of them. I thread them with Beall thread taps that we'll talk about in a minute. I use these waste blocks for a lot of things in segmented turning. You can certainly use them in any other kind of turning. Very handy to have. You know, they're as you can see here, this one is made of a number of thicknesses that I'm down now to a little tiny bit. I always mark them where the screws are for the faceplate. There's metal in there, so I don't want to turn past the mark, the point where I have them marked. And when it gets to that point, I face it off and glue another scrap of wood on there and clean that up and make a new depth of faceplate and keep using that repeatedly, so I don't ever have to replace this. Again, you see, I use them here. I have them on. This is actually two separate pieces. They're not glued together yet. I use glue blocks on both the headstock and tailstock side when you're putting pieces together. They work great. Commercially, there's only one available that I saw that is a glue hub from Simple Wood Turning Tools. Candidly, I didn't even know this existed before I did this presentation. I haven't ordered this one yet, but I got enough glue blocks. But anyway, this one's available if anybody's interested. Thread taps to make those glue blocks and to make this is the size that you would typically use to make the glue blocks. This is 1 1/4 by 8, and I think one of these is 1 by 8. You would make these once you buy these, you follow the directions, watch these videos. This is from Mr. Beall himself, showing how to use his thread taps. Really, really handy to have. You can make an infinite number of these things. They work great. These thread taps are for 3/4 by 10, and you can make all kinds of attachments for your live center with this set of thread taps. Really handy to have in the shop. Your imagination is your only limitation on the kinds of things that you can make with these thread taps. Really, really handy to have, and remarkably easy to use. Remarkably easy to use. Faceplates and rings. I use a ton of faceplates and rings in the shop for various reasons. Lots of different sizes and materials available. As you'll see on the faceplates, there's I don't have an 8-inch shown, but 8-inch ones are available. There's 6, 4, and 3-inch rings. The ones underneath it there tend to be very differently sized, and this note here is pretty important to keep in mind. Different manufacturers of rings, they tend to, or of faceplate rings, tend to size them to their specific chuck sizes, not to a general chuck size. So if you're going to buy faceplate rings, try to buy them from the manufacturer that produced your chuck jaws, because they are generally sized to that specific manufacturer's jaws, which will vary in size, as we talked about before. So, you know, look at whether your manufacturer produces their own faceplate rings. This is how you see one applied, as opposed to screwing this onto the back of something. You simply screw this little faceplate on or faceplate ring and mount it in a set of jaws. And as you see, this is designed for this particular size of jaw. It just opens up enough to where it's open to a full circle, and you get good tight fit around the interior of these dovetail cuts that are made around the inside of the faceplate ring. A cheaper alternative, the rings are, to buying faceplates all the time. These faceplates are expensive. You know, they're pretty pricey, particularly the one-ways, although I love the one-ways, they're great. They are really heavy and really expensive, so you don't want to buy a ton of them. These are just, and forgive my anal inclusion of all of these advisories on how you go about screwing on a faceplate, and what size screws and what type screws and what length screws and what drive type and all that. This is just kind of a synthesis of everything that you read from all the different manufacturers and users about what's the best thing to use. There's no magic to this. These are not hard and fast rules, just suggestions. Pay attention to them or not as you see fit, entirely up to you. But I included them for whatever value they may have. And again, some video links on both an article and a video from Kent Weekly on how to use faceplates. And he encompasses many of these up here. He writes some really good stuff, and a video link from the wood turning store on how to do it. All right, jam chucks, again, another method of holding work on the lathe, and we'll get to some more esoteric types a little bit later on with collet chucks and other kinds of crazy things, eccentric chucks and whatnot. But jam chucks are pretty commonly used. You've seen Scott Wishart use them when he was doing the second turning on that rough turn bowl that he had done in the earlier piece. You know, there are a whole variety of different jam chucks available. This is that Turner Select bowl chucker pad. This flexes quite a bit. You can, you know, put your bowl blank, your rough turn bowl blank against this and use tailstock support to push it against there. That works pretty well. This one is shaped very much like this. It's just got some black neoprene on it to protect whatever piece I'm pushing up against it. Again, this is a one that I've threaded. Both of these I've actually threaded with the Beall thread tap. They work pretty well. Another very traditional way of jam chucking is to put a larger piece of scrap wood on there and turn something that is exactly the size you need to friction fit the particular bowl blank inside that. It's not a method that I use because candidly, I don't do enough bowls like that to get good at it, and it does take some skill, which is a skill I don't have. But anyway, a lot of professional turners use that method. This is also from Kent Weekly on his Turnwood Bowl site to show you what the best shape of a jam chuck is, showing this is not the best shape because you've got really one contact point here. This is the better shape. It's reflected over here where you've got two contact points. It holds it a lot more stable. Over here, this is a lot of turn jam chucks that have been used for different purposes. Jam chucks, you can custom turn them to fit anything, depending on what little small project you have. Anything can be a jam chuck. This is a jam plate. It's just a flat plate that's mounted on I think this one's on a faceplate. It's just a fat plate that if you have a bowl blank that has a nice true surface on it that to mount up against here, then it's fine. Obviously, if you can't use this with a natural edge bowl, that wouldn't work. You'd have to use something like these. But for the right kind of blank that's got a nice true rim on it, these work great. You know, and we'll show you a little bit later what this looks like to allow you to mount this pretty quickly in a fashion that's almost dead on. It's being centered on that plate, so called a centering plate. All right, forgive me if I'm losing my voice. I'm talking all. Drill chucks, two main kinds of chucks, as you know, the keyless chuck and the keyed chuck. If these are traditionally used, as you know, in the tailstock, as are shown here, they can be used on the headstock to drill under power. If you do that, make sure you always use a drawbar, and we'll talk about drawbars to hold that drill chuck in place. They may or may not, the particular drill chuck you have may or may not have an arbor that is threaded to accept a drawbar. If not, you can order, as we have here. This is the type of, typically the type of drill chuck arbor that you would use You can order that threaded either for 3/8 by 16 or 1/4 by 20, the two traditional drawbar types in this country. Or you can get, this is a headstock mounted key drill chuck that's available from I think that's PSI Industries. I didn't even know this was available. Saw this when I was doing this presentation. Only comes with 1 1/8 thread, so you need an adapter for 1 1/4 by 8. But you know, this you mount directly. You don't need a drawbar in this one because this mounts directly on your spindle. Kind of interesting. So sanding accessories, you know, this again is an area you could spend many sessions on, as opposed to just a couple of minutes. This is unique to each person. We all use different things to sand with. These are just some of the things I use or have seen used. Like I use these things quite a bit, but there's a million different kinds of sanding blocks available. This is the one I use from Woodturner's Wonders, you know, as an inertia sander. Again, many varieties of that. All kinds of powered sanders. A lot of people use cordless drills, corded drills. This is an angle drill from Woodturner's Wonders. I happen to use this from Woodturner's Wonders. This is a pneumatic sander, and it is a variable speed, and this is the most important part, a random orbit sander. I can't even tell you how much I love this piece of equipment. It does just an astonishing amount of work in sanding very, very efficiently because it is random orbit. It does, however, require a compressor. You have to have compressed air, and it has to be a fairly decent sized compressor because it takes a fair bit of air to run it consistently. But it's palm operated, so it's variable speed. And you know, just by palm pressure, you increase or decrease the speed. And it's random orbit. It's designed to do 5 or 6 inch discs, but obviously we don't use anything that large. And at least I certainly don't in wood turning. I use 2 and 3 inch, mostly 3 inch. And it's very easy to control a 3 inch disc with this thing, even though it's random orbit, which means it moves around a little bit more in your hand. I think it moves about 5 millimeters. You know, so it's got a distinct random orbit movement to it, but does an amazing job of stopping there from being you know, noticeable sanding lines in something because of the random orbit motion. One of the other things that you can see around, obviously they have these long reach sanding balls. I love the looks of that. I don't think I've ever used one, but it's cool. These hook and loop things, I got different versions of this. They work great. These things, depending on what you're doing, like if you're doing spatulas like this guy, this is really handy, although I wouldn't use it with a big chuck spinning next to my hand. I'd use a collet chuck because then you can spin that without potentially wrapping your knuckle with the chuck, because this is much thinner than the piece you're using. Really handy to use. This I rescued from or salvaged from my old drill press drum sanding days before we had you know, the oscillating spindle sanders that we use in the wood shop. These things come in handy on the lathe. They work great. Really handy to use. This thing has been shown by Carl Jacobson. He showed that on 1 or 2 of his videos. It's, for whatever it's worth, it's gotten kind of sketchy reviews because it uses a bladder, an air bladder, to tighten against the inside of the sanding sleeve. It's gotten kind of sketchy reviews because of bladder leakage. There are non-bladder versions available. Infinity Tools just came out with a non-bladder version. I haven't used that one. I haven't used either one of them, so I don't know whether they're any good or not. I stick with this, and it works fine for what I use it for. But everybody pick what they want. We'll talk about these a little bit later. Just sanding boards that you use for truing up the faces of I use it for the faces of segmented rings, but you can use it for. I use it also to true up the faces of waste blocks, glue blocks. You know, after I rough cut across the surface to get it almost completely true, and then hit it with one of these to sand it. Works great. So, okay. Dust extraction. Again, an area you could spend forever on. What we're trying to do is obviously protect our lungs and keep as much of the dust away from our lungs as possible. So this is obviously, I'd be doing a disservice if I didn't say this has got to be combined with using your PPE. That we'll have a slide on a little bit later. You really got to make sure you protect your lungs and use as good a lung protection as you can, because you're never going to collect all of the dust that we're talking about here. But various methods to do it, and these are just a few of the hundreds of different ideas that people have as to how to collect dust. I happen to use this one, the black hole dust catcher. I use this bar that connects to the back of my lathe, and this tube and arm. I do not use the large catcher here that kind of gets in my way a lot. This is my setup here. I use a piece of stay put hose that's available from all those different vendors. You can bend that in any shape you want, and it stays in place, hence the name stay put hose. It stays put wherever you put it. It stays right there. It doesn't collect from a large area like some of these do, but it works for the type of turning that I do. You may do a different kind of turning, but Woodturners Wonders has this version. That they have their own track that's similar to the black hole dust catcher. This is their version of the track. That we'll talk about. This is a bowl depth gauge. We'll talk about in a minute. Their version of the flexible dust catcher thing is this assembly right here. I've never worked it, but all the videos show you having to use two hands, one on each of these arms, to get it to reposition itself. I'm not sure how practical that is, but anyway, that's how they show it working. Maybe somebody has it and it worked great. I don't know. I've never used it, so I don't have any idea. You can see other types of assemblies that people come up with, all kinds of different ideas that they have. This one down here is Richard Graffin. This is what he uses. This is one of the premier bolt turners in the world. And if you see the lathe, he turns it up, turns all this stuff on now. It's a little tiny lathe. It's a little small lathe. And this is his dust catching assembly. These are two pieces here. This is an L-shaped loose piece of wood right here and a loose lid on top. And he adjusts that to whatever size he needs. He either pushes this in or pulls it out, and just uses either this top or he has a little bit larger top if he needs a really long section. But rarely do you ever see him use that, the longer one. So he just adjusts this, very simple, very basic. And Tomislav Tomasek, his disciple, as a production turner, has adopted the same thing. The downside from my perspective is it requires a table back behind the lathe. I don't have that set up. As you can see, this is the back of my lathe. Doing the type of turning I do, I need to get behind the lathe periodically. If I'm doing some really deep segmented pieces, I have to be behind the lathe at times. You can't be with this kind of setup or what Tomasek uses. But for the type of turning they do, it works great. This guy down here scares the hell out of me. I don't know what this is. It's a Pac-Man kind of assembly. I don't know what that is, but hopefully it works for him. It scares the hell out of me. I wouldn't want to put my hands near it, but anyway. This is somebody using a television arm assembly to hold this in place. I guess that works. This is a Raffin type assembly. This is a really elaborate kind of swing arm deal. Again, however it works, that works for you. All these are just people's different ideas of what works for dust extraction, but for heaven's sake, try to use something, particularly when you're sanding. You got to protect your lungs. So anyway, some ideas on dust extraction. Chip containment curtain. This is what I use to stop. If I don't do a whole lot of wet wood turning, but when you do, obviously it makes a huge mess. It goes all over everything that I have stored there. So I've just installed this. This is flexible track that you see. It's available from Amazon. It's really cheap. It costs nothing, and it works like a charm. You buy the curtain clips, and these are $6 white sheets from Amazon or from Walmart, rather. I mean, they work great. It's perfect, and you just pull this around, and it doesn't collect anything, but it does contain the mess. And everything just drops at the foot of the curtains. So it works like a charm. Everybody comes up with their own technique. A lot of people use plastic, clear plastic curtains, whatever works for you. $6 Walmart ones work good for me, so they're fine. All right, lighting, again, very subjective. Everybody uses something different. Those who have been in my shop know it's like an operating room in there because I'm like half blind, so I need it really, really bright. All of my ceiling cans are 5,000 Kelvin bulbs, so that it's really, really bright. I have 120 ceiling cans in the shop, so it's really, really bright. Most people tend to use these days like 4-foot LED fixtures, fixtures with LED bulbs. They work fantastically. Whatever works for you. This is a YouTube video on a guy who was putting those 4-foot LED fixtures in. Works great. I have the only LED tube fixture I have is this little 2-foot one that's right directly over the bed of the lathe. This came from Amazon. It's really fantastic. It throws a lot of light. And because it's right where my eyes would be blinded by it, I put a little board in front of it, and it directs the light right straight down to the lathe bed. Really helps a lot. That comes on automatically as soon as the shop lights come on. So that works well. Another type of light is a tool rest light. Cindy Drozda sells these. I've candidly never been terrifically impressed with them because depending on the tool rest you use, it's never angled it exactly the right way to get the light to stick in the way you want it to stick and shed the light where you want the light to be. What I have been using of late is this little deal that came from Harbor Freight, good old Harbor Freight. This is a rechargeable 800 lumen LED light that I got to tell you is one of the most fantastic things for hollow forms I've ever seen. Really strong magnet on the base, really clamps that little sucker in place, works like a charm. I don't know if you can see the inside of that hollow form. It's like daylight inside there just from that one little light. You know, it really works well. You know, it's a light that is designed to, you have three options. Either this whole bar lights up and it lights upwards. There's a little smaller light that'll light downwards, or it's this front light, this little thing that I use that puts all of the concentrates, all 800 lumens directly ahead as a pinpoint light, which for hollow forms is absolutely ideal. And you can just move it exactly out of the way wherever you need it to be and direct that light inside the hollow form. Works like a charm. Really handy thing. I think it's like $40, except you can get it on sale with their coupons. I think I got it for $20 with one of the coupons. Well worth it from my perspective. Other kinds of task lights, you've all seen these task lights from both Packard, Woodturner's Wonders. Everybody sells them. Craft Supplies. This is a constellation lamp that Woodturner's Wonders sells. A lot of people like these Moffat lamps from Robust. You put your own LED bulb inside whatever wattage and light color you want. You can certainly adjust that however you need. A lot of people like the Moffat lights. So anyway, that's lighting choices. What do we have? Depth gauges. A lot of different choices here. Commercial ones, you know, Trent Bosch has come out with his set of depth gauges to measure bowl depth. These are the ones I use. This is one I shop made. These are for smaller, little small hollow forms. This is for bowls. This one in the lower left corner, Ron Brown just came out with within the last week or so. I think his bowl bottom thickness finder. In other words, that's where you're trying to find how much bowl depth, how much further deep can I go in the bowl before it's a funnel. This works. This is kind of a commercial version of this one, which is a shop made version. Yeah, again, there are a variety of different styles of this kind available, where you use different spacers back here depending on which set of chucks and jaws you're using. This is a commercial version that Woodturner's Wonders sells, called their AccuDepth bowl gauge. This clamps on the back and it works like this one. This is the version I made on mine. This goes on that bar on the back of my lathe, where the dust collector is connected to. This pulls down when you want to use it. It pulls down and you adjust it so that it's right against the outer face of the jaws that you're going to mount your bowl blank on, and then you move this. This is this picture up. You can see this is a barrel nut with a thumb screw on it, and you move that right up against here, and so that you're locking it in place right against your chuck jaws. And then when you are turning your bowl, this space right down here is how much wood you have left before you hit the jaws. In other words, before it's a funnel. So, you know, this is actually a little bit heavy. This is like, maybe it looks like about 3/8 of an inch. But you can see that's how much wood is between the tip of this and the chuck jaw surface. This works really well in preventing making funnels. I even labeled it so people know what it is. This makes it really stable, putting this bowl depth gauge stabilizer. There are magnets here, magnetized. Since this is metal on the lathe and put a metal plate here, this stabilizes it so it doesn't move at all. It's really rigid. It doesn't waffle at all back and forth. I don't know whether the commercial version that Woodturner's Wonders sells has anything like that, but this works really well for me. So it's a funnel preventer. Works great. But anyway, you can just use a bowl depth gauge to do it instead of something like this, or you can just do it by eye and hope for the best. You know, always up to you. Also helpful in the process is calipers and wall thickness gauges. A whole variety of these things out there in all shapes and sizes. Obviously, you see the calipers to measure inner dimensions, outer dimensions. These are golden mean, golden ratio calipers. I have a link here to the free plans that James King has made available on his King's Fine Woodworking site. These were made from his plans. All of a sudden, there seems to be quite a bit of interest in golden ratio calipers because all of a sudden we have Trent Bosch coming out with his version of them. They're available now. And Woodpeckers came out with a one-time tool, the Fibonacci gauge. That's the golden ratio caliper. These are also available on Etsy. I didn't find anything on Amazon for whatever it's worth, other than little small 5 and 6 inch ones designed for eyebrow work. Since I don't do eyebrow work, that size is a little tiny for me. So, you know, the larger ones like these that are available and from Trent Bosch seems to be more practical. This is, for those who don't know what the golden ratio is, remember you hear people talk about proportions being the ideal proportion of the eye is 1/3, 2/3. That's really the golden ratio, although the ratio is not really 1/3, 2/3. It's one, as you'll see down here, 1 to 1.618. So it's almost 1/3, 2/3. But it's really more accurately 1 to 1.618. And these calipers give you those proportions. This is really the 1/3, and this is the 2/3. A little bit less than that, but that's the golden ratio. The ratio, for example, a lid on a vessel to the body of the vessel. The top of the vessel rather to the body of the vessel, in that proportion would be pretty good. Thickness gauges, for if you're turning a bowl, want to know the thickness of the wall, obviously you can use calipers like this. You can use the Tompkins thickness gauge, which is fantastic. For most of the turning that I do, I'll be honest, I use this from eye gauging. This only has about a 6 1/4 inch depth here, but that allows me to do most of the turning I do. And the reason I like this as opposed to anything like the Tompkins gauge is the Tompkins gauge, you're still kind of gauging by eye how much the difference is as it moves along. It doesn't give you any numbers. If you use something like this is digital, and it will show you by the 100th of an inch exactly how your depth, your wall thickness rather, is changing as you move down the wall of the bowl. It's just my personal preference. I happen to like something that shows me the exact wall thickness as I go along, so that I don't have to exercise my brain and interpret exactly what the thickness is here. But that's just me. Everybody has their own style. Also, different kinds of calipers here that we use for measuring all kinds of things in the shop. The Easy Cal is the one I use because it has really big numbers, and I'm half blind and can't see, so I don't use the dial caliper too much, although it's handy at times. But I really like the large number ones that I can see easily. These are shop made out of wire that you get from a good thick hanger. They work great as wall thickness gauges. These are the more traditional wall thickness gauges you see folks use. These homemade ones, they work, you know, they work pretty well. But here's a video on how to make them. So compasses, again, all shapes and sizes of compasses, you know, little ones, big ones. I keep some that are sized permanently to specific mortise or tenon sizes, and just keep them handy. Other turners make go no-go gauges. Mike Peace has a video linked here on how to make go no-go gauges that essentially do the same thing as preset calipers. You can order them on Etsy for certain chucks, like this VM100 number two chucks, or number 2 jaws rather, or Talon number 2 jaws. So you can pick whatever means works best for you. Detachment saws, in other words, if you're too chicken to part the piece off while the lathe is spinning, you cut it off when it's stopped. These are the kinds of saws that you can use. I tend to use the Veritas saw and this little cheapo pole saw that works great for that purpose. All kinds of different varieties available. Everybody uses their own preferred style. These are handy to keep around to cut things off the lathe so you don't have a giant piece spinning off and running wildly around your shop. We said earlier we're going to talk about drawbars. Drawbars are really handy to have around for certain types of things. If you're using like this one over here, you're using the drill chuck in the headstock and want to use it under power, you would never turn that lathe on with the drill chuck in unless that's being held in place by a drawbar, because that thing will come out of there at the least expected moment and be a huge heavy missile aimed at somebody. You don't want to ever use a drill chuck in a headstock without there being a drawbar, which means you have to have a threaded arbor on the back of that. And that's what we're showing down here, what a threaded arbor look like. This is the 3/8 by 16 where you'd use this drawbar, this thickness drawbar. This is the 1/4 by 20 where you'd use either of these two thickness drawbars. And the drawbar length is determined by, what the length is from here to here to give you room to use it. And every lathe tends to be different in that regard. Obviously, my smaller lathe uses this size. The bigger lathe uses this size for a 1/4 inch and this size for the 3/8 by 16. This size arbor has just a punch hole only. This is pretty common. You see this on a lot of devices that fit into an MT2 arbor. This has no hole at all. It's solid all the way down. So we have references in the resources section of where you can order threaded arbors that you can, if your drill chuck doesn't have a threaded arbor on it, you can take that arbor out and buy a replacement one that is threaded and install that. It works like a charm. I've done it with both of my drill chucks, and they work terrifically. And going back to that one for a minute, these cones I put in here just to keep the drawbar centered, as you see here, just to keep the drawbar centered as it's going in, because that's a pretty big hole, and I don't want it wandering as I'm tightening it. I want to keep it as centered as I possibly can. This one I didn't need to because it's such a short distance, but these long distances, this thing is pulled way back. So you want to make sure you've got one of these cones on there to keep that bar centered as you tighten it up. All right, PPE, again, this is very personal as to what your safety concern is, your level of concern. I use at the very least one of the bionic face shields and the Ellipse dust mask. Other people use various, some people are fine with just an RZ mask. I don't find them comfortable, but that's just the shape of my face. Everybody's face shape is different. Some people, these are just absolutely the most comfortable thing in the world on. It's simply not on me, unfortunately. So I use one of these and it's fun. But all these three are pretty expensive options, but they work. On Pekids too, pretty expensive options, but they work really well. Sunstrom's pretty expensive as well. But if you're really committed to lung safety, it's worth the investment, believe me. Other things you might find useful, welder's cap. This is not the front of the cap. This is the back of the cap. This is to go over your neck to stop the shavings from dropping down, just like, a welder doesn't want the hot sparks to be going down his back. This is the same thing for turning. You can use a welder's cap. They're all available on Amazon, or waders to stop it going into your shoes. Gaiters, rather, waders. Gaiters to stop it from going into your shoes. Again, could be very handy. Particularly if, like me, you turn in shorts and just shoes with no socks at times, and your feet fill up with a lot of shavings if you don't use gaiters. So anyway, keep in mind, you need to really focus on this. Pick whatever is within your budget and meet your particular health concerns. So lathe maintenance, again, these are just random samples I pulled out and threw onto the lathe bed. Make sure you clean, lubricate your bedways, banjo base, the clamp and tailstock base, the clamp and quill. All of that needs to be regularly maintained. And a lot of people just ignore it until all of a sudden their banjo doesn't slide at all anymore. That's really too late. You need to be doing it much more regularly than that. Same with the tailstock. You really need to take that off the lathe and clean it and lubricate it and keep it in good shape. And these are just some of the many products that can be used for that purpose. So just a reminder to keep doing that. All right, things are great to have but not essential. Coal jaws, coal or button jaws and Longworth chucks. Again, another way of mounting something on the lathe, particularly if you're reverse mounting a bowl, you want to clean up the bottom of the bowl. The coal jaws are fantastic. this, the one tip that I got some time ago from Glenn Lucas, the noted Irish turner, was to use this adhesive back cork tape that you can get from Amazon. It prevents you from having to do this down here in the lower right corner, the paper on there to protect the edge of your bowl. You don't have to do that with this cork tape. It's fantastic. Works like a charm. Longworth chucks. I don't know how many people know what Longworth chucks are. Just a version of a cold jaw that is self-adjustable. You know, with these you have to keep moving all those buttons around all the time, and it's a pain in the neck. The Longworth chuck moves them all at once, depending on which of these slots it's mounted in. I keep them mounted in the long slot, so they move the furthest distance. And you just simply spin it, spin the sides of it, the front and back of it around, and it automatically adjusts all of them at one time. Really handy. As you can see, I've got different bowls and things mounted in it. This is a Frisbee. Tom Sloan, I'm still waiting for your entry into the Frisbee challenge that we have going. You know, that's my Frisbee. Anyway, you'll see in the upper right corner here the different types. These are just some of the different types of buttons that you can get. Lots of different options available depending on the piece that you're mounting. You can see I use longer ones here on this straight-sided, tall straight-sided piece. You can actually stack the buttons by using longer screws. Most of them, I think, are M6 screws, M6 metric thread screws. You get longer ones, you can actually stack the buttons. Sometimes that's necessary for the type of piece that you're mounting on there. Nothing wrong with that. It might affect how fast you spin it, but you can certainly stack them if you need to. All right. And I'll try to do this a little bit faster. Steady rest, center steadies, lots of different kinds of these. Commercial ones shown here. This is the Carter products. This is Advanced Lathe Tools. This is a heavy beast. It's a monster. Ron Brown sells a variety on Ron Brown's best site. Robust sells an excellent one. These two are shop made. This is the one I made. This is another shop made one. This one's available on Etsy. This guy, I have no idea what this is. This is the most unique center steady I've ever seen. I'm sure it works. It's just frightening to look at, but I bet it works. Interesting design. Anyway, bowl steady. You remember when our Scott Wishart did his presentation on bowl turning, was talking about holding his hand against the outside of the bowl as he's turning to stop vibration. You know, this is designed to so that you don't have to do that if you're not comfortable holding your hand there. You know, the bowl steady is used, as you see here. I've used it in a variety of different bowls, you know, to provide support there, so you're not having to hold your hand out there. You know, works like a charm if that's a type of attachment that you want. One Way is the only company that makes a bowl steady like that I'm aware of. There may be other brands available on Amazon or something, but of the major manufacturers, I think that's the only one. A Spindle Steady, this is also One Way's version. This is a much shorter base on it than the, see the base on this one, how long that one is. This is a long base. The Spindle Steady, because you're only turning supposedly a spindle with it, you need to be much closer up to the center of the lathe bed, so you don't need a long bed on it. You can buy the bowl steady, with its long base and rod, and then separately buy just the upper portion of the Spindle Steady if you want, and it makes it much cheaper and gives you both devices with just one base. Makes it much more practical. Bickmark also makes a Spindle Steady, much pricier, but excellent. Coring systems, not something I personally use, but these are, from what I understand, the leading contenders. This is the newer Max 4 system from Woodcut, supposedly really good. The video of this was really excellent from Wood Turning Tool Store on the setup and use of this. Really interesting stuff to watch. This is the McNaughton. This is the One Way. Again, pretty terrific. Hollowing rigs, the usual array. We've had a presentation on them. Scott, this is the link to Scott's video that he did on the Elbow 2 hollowing system from Tim Yoder. This is Lyle Jamison's, Trent Bosch's. This is Ron Brown's and Steve Sinner's. And here's a link to a video on making one yourself. If you are so inclined, you can make it yourself. Various varieties of hollowing systems. Pick whichever one appeals to you. Vacuum systems, two primary types. One that's run off of a vacuum pump like this. That's the one most common type of vacuum system. Frugal Vacuum Chuck was the company that was doing it for a lot of years. Bob Leonard decided to retire and started working with the guy that ran the Odd Knot, I think it was oddknot.com site, but apparently that fell through for whatever reason. Bob is now back in business as Frugal Vacuum Chuck, once again refurbishing these vacuum pumps and selling them. Apparently doing quite a land office business with them once again. This is his version of it from a couple of years ago. I upgraded the filter and put an upgraded oil-filled dial indicator. It's oil-filled ones are a little bit more accurate and stable. They don't bounce around quite as much. But anyway, this is how you use them. They get connected usually one of two ways, either using this kind of a mount that mounts directly into your wheel, your hand wheel of your spindle. You can see it mounted right here. It just sticks directly in. Or if you don't have an adapter, and they only make adapters that fit into certain sizes and shapes of hand wheel entry points. If they don't make one for your lathe, then you'd use this traditional, what's called a lamp post or lamp rod assembly. And you take this little end, unscrew this end off, stick it through there, and then screw that end back on in there, and it holds tight in the opening of your spindle. And that's how the vacuum gets to the end point over here to run in the vacuum chucks that we'll talk about in just a minute. The other type of vacuum system is a Venturi vacuum system. This is the hold fast system. But for this one, you don't need a vacuum pump. You do need, however, an air compressor. And it's got to be an air compressor with at least 2.5 cubic feet per minute capacity at 70 PSI. Otherwise, it won't produce enough compressed air to run the system. So it's got to be a pretty decent size air compressor in order to run. And it connects the same way, typically using a lamp rod like this one to run through the headstock and connect to a vacuum chuck that then holds your bowl in place. Depending on the wood of your bowl, down here, as you'll see, the center of the screen at the bottom, sometimes your wood is a little bit porous. Tape is your friend. Put some blue painter's tape on it, and you'll be amazed at how much the vacuum draws once that tape goes on. Because otherwise you can literally feel the suction coming through the wood. If the wood's really porous, you need a lot of tape, like this one. It required a lot of tape to make that one hold in place. Sometimes if you have a very fragile, really thin wall bowl that isn't porous at all, these vacuum systems are strong enough, you will actually implode the bowl. So that's why these devices both have these little adjustment valves here and over here. They have those adjustment valves so that you can reduce the amount of pressure. Mine will draw all the way down to about 27 inches of mercury. It'll flip way down here because I live at sea level. And so it draws really well, but some bowls you don't want to draw that much. You may release that valve so it's only drawing maybe 15 inches of mercury so you don't implode the bowl. But they're both adjustable for that purpose. Works like a charm. All right, vacuum chucks. These are commercial varieties here from Holdfast. This is Frugal's that comes with the system that you order. This is a shop made one that I made. One-way vacuum chucks. Vicmark makes them. This is a vacuum plate. This is my version of a vacuum plate. Again, the air simply goes through, and there's a hole in this vacuum plate that you use as both a centering plate and a vacuum plate. Holds that bowl perfectly in place right there. I dare you to try to pull that thing off. If you want to center mount this onto the vacuum chuck, remember what we talked about before as to which system you would use to mount this. Is this the best way to do it? The answer to that is probably no. The better way to do it is to use one of those static, non-spinning reverse chuck adapters rather than this whole assembly, which has a bunch of different moving parts on it. But anyway, I put a picture in there of what you shouldn't do. So, collet chucks, one of my favorite things, frankly, on the lathe. I use collet chucks constantly for little things. Collet chucks aren't very expensive. You can buy an expensive version from Beall, but you don't have to. Frankly, this one is a fairly inexpensive one from PSI or something, and it works like a charm. It is true as can be, just runs beautifully. This is a different version of vacuum chuck of collet chuck. This type has only 3 different sizes on it, not particularly useful because it's so limited in the number of choices you have. If you're using this kind of collet chuck, this is the most typical kind. This runs off ER32 collets. They're a pretty standard collet here in the US. They use something different. I think ER23s in England, but we use ER32s for the most part. I have here sets of both SAE and metric ones up to 3/4 of an inch and 20 millimeters. There is nothing in between those sizes, right from almost 0 up to 3/4 of an inch that you can't solidly chuck using one of those. It's an amazing system, and it runs just as true as can be. Really, really great system for doing small turning. Donut chucks. I don't know how many people use donut chucks. Most of these are shop made. This is one commercial variety from Ron Brown's Best. He still makes these. This is a regular vacuum or a regular donut chuck here that I used in cleaning up the bottom of this segmented piece. This is, in essence, these two at the bottom lower right are not designed as donut chucks. They're actually designed as a gluing jig for gluing staved vessels together, but you use it essentially as a donut chuck to turn the bottom of the piece. Really an elaborate assembly for gluing, but works tremendously to hold it securely in place. There's a faceplate mounted on the bottom of this, so it just screws right onto the spindle. Works great to hold the whole thing in place as you turn the bottom. Other chuck options for this: wooden and soft jaw and soft nylon jaw chucks. These nylon jaws are available from several manufacturers. You can custom turn them to whatever shape you want. For wooden jaws like this, I have just a regular 4-inch chuck, and you can buy what is essentially a flat plate jaw that mounts on top of the chuck. There are no real jaws on it. It's just a flat plate, and you screw these to it. They're made specifically for wooden jaws, and you can custom make your jaw and turn it. Oddly enough, these two are the same. It's all lighting that made the difference in those two pictures. It's the same item, just under different lighting. Very strange. Spike drives, lots of different spike drives available. If you turn some really oddly shaped blanks and aren't able to get them, with nice parallel sides to them when you mount them on the lathe, and you've got all kinds of uneven sides, you might need adjustable spike plates. A lot of different drives available to do that. This is the smallest one. This one, the Elio DR safe drives, are also kind of small. This Ames Grigg, she does just this is a marvelous idea, and it's a nice big heavy duty plate. You drill a center hole to hold it in place, and then you can adjust the depth of these spikes depending on what your the odd configuration of the piece you're trying to turn. Mike Peace has a nice video on how to make a shop made one. It's pretty straightforward, not really very difficult, but useful drives if you do that kind of turning. These are the really large cone centers I referenced. If anybody needs to borrow a cone center like this, they're enormous ones that I've used for a couple of special projects. Anybody ever needs one, call me, let me know. I'll be happy to loan them to you. They work like a charm, the true as can be, but really heavy. Hollow form bottom finishing jigs. Obviously you use these if you've got a hollow form that you need to do a little cleanup on the very bottom of it. This is the type of jig that you make. You can buy the 3/4 by 10 threaded rod at Home Depot, Lowe's, you name it. Any good hardware store has this kind of threaded rod. You can mount it in a variety of different ways. I happen to have a machinist whose name and contact information I put at the end of the presentation. You can email him, Rick Harrell. Custom made this one. It's threaded 1 1/4 by 8 on this end and 3/4 by 10 on this end, and you just screw that in and tighten it in, and away you go. That made a really nice, easy to use assembly. And you use different length threaded rod depending on, and you can interchange it as quickly as you want. I made up several different lengths of rod, so that depending on the depth of the vessel that you have here, you can turn it and use a little raffin disc there to hold against it. You didn't have to, but it was handy to use. If you don't want to do this, you can do what the alternative that Richard Raffin describes, which is custom turn your own chuck extension. Essentially doing the same thing. You turn this, and then this is a hollow form that he uses a raffin disc to jam against the end piece here in order to turn the bottom of it. So a couple options for turning the bottom of hollow forms. Lathe-mounted turning tool holders, again, a lot of different options, commercial variety available here, shop-made ones over here. This is one that I made for my smaller lathe. I have a bed extension on the smaller lathe over here, and because this was a nice hollow space, you can't really see them here, but their drawer slides under here. This whole thing slides out, little tool holder, miscellaneous tool holder, and then turning tool holder here. And when I'm done with it, it just all slides back in underneath and gets out of the way. This one is on the side of my big lathe, and it mounts from up underneath, and I built a series of mechanisms that allows it to swing around. I can swing it around to wherever I happen to need it at the time. It works great both as a tool holder and as just an auxiliary table if I'm not using it to hold tools. Works great for that purpose. So bed extensions and swingaways, again, your choice. If you have room in your shop, it's ridiculously handy to have either one of these to get the tailstock out of the way when you're turning certain items where you really need that swing space to swing the end of the tool around. I don't recall ever having to remove my tailstock for any reason because I put a 20-inch extension on. I have to have the space to do it, so I can get that out of the way. Or if you have a swing away, which is ideal, particularly a hydraulically mounted one, which is fantastic, drop it out of the way so that you don't have to constantly lift that thing off and lift it back on, and particularly heavy as you get, as aged as some of us are, including me. So handy to have if you can. Compressed air line, as Joe and I were talking about when we were at the Mennonite school turning over the weekend. I don't know how you get by without compressed air at your lathe. A lot of people do, but I've lived by compressed air, both for sanding and just for general cleanup. For sanding with this pneumatic sander, the one I talked about before, but also even changing grits. As a lot of folks tell you when you're sanding, don't ever start sanding with a new grit until you have blown the dust off from the prior grit, because a lot of that prior larger grit is still there. And all you're doing is sanding it back in if you don't blow that off before you go to the next grit, the next smallest grit. And compressed air is ideal for doing that. This is the size compressor I have. I think the same one. Scott and I both have the same compressor, and works like a charm for this purpose. Large enough for vacuum chucking and for anything else, frankly, you need around a wood turning shop. Works great. Also, I don't know if anybody's ever used a gun drill. This is a gun drill. This is actually the drill the drill bit here is upside down. It actually is used face the other way with the holes on top up here. It blows the chips out as the piece spins around it, but that has to have compressed air to work, and it works like a charm. The other thing that's great is this is the back assembly on my lathe. You have to have in order to use this device here, this only takes up to about 20 psi. This is for just regular compressed air that's generally running about 90. It'll blow this thing off the lathe. This is a chip away blower system if you're turning hollow forms. Rather than have to stop the lathe and grab this thing, the compressed air nozzle, and blow it out, you just hook it up to the chip away blower system, and it runs off this foot pedal down here, and all you do is just reach over with your right foot and tap that pedal, and it blows out the chips out of the hollow form beautifully, just by tapping the pedal. Works like a charm. All right, spindle blank center markers, pretty straightforward. We all have those, or you just use the standard pencil to do it the regular way, whichever you pick. Handy to have around the shop. Any of these different varieties, and there's a bunch of others as well. Beall buffing system, again, everybody knows, I think, what the buffing systems are. Obviously this picture was taken when it was new. Doesn't look like that now, but I love that picture because it looks so new and gorgeous. But anyway, everybody knows what the Beall buffing system is. These are other options available from Axminster. Either this one threads onto your spindle, or this one mounts in the as an arbor mount to put a mop on. Either one of those also work just fine. All of those are great for that purpose. This is not a whole lot of people use these in their shop. I have it just to check my headstock tailstock alignment periodically. It's a Morse taper alignment tool. If it's properly aligned, you put it in, and you put it in one end and bring the tailstock end up, and this is the way it's supposed to look. Just this section that you can see in the middle without using a hammer. If it fits like that without using a hammer, it's properly aligned. If it doesn't, then you need to realign it. And there's a video link on slide 25 that includes suggestions from Ted Sokolowski on how to correct headstock tailstock misalignment. Really good advice on how to do it easily. But it's a good, cheap tool to be able to check your headstock tailstock alignment, make sure you're getting you know, a true alignment for drilling purposes, especially. It's really good to have. Disc sanding on the lathe, one of the things I love doing. I always wanted a 20-inch disc sander. This is ideal. You just make up a big MDF disc, put a faceplate on it, order from Klingspor a 20-inch pressure sensitive adhesive disc, and away you go. You got a 20-inch sanding disc sander, and it's fantastic. Use a small table here. You got the post and base from chef work kits. Make sure, particularly if you're using these one-way 6-inch, 1.25 by 8 face plates, they do not have grub screws on them. One-way doesn't make them with grub screws. So don't turn this off. Don't turn the lathe off fast. Don't ask me how I know, it says. Turn it off slowly, turn it down slowly, because otherwise that sucker will spin off and wander around the shop rather dangerously. So don't do that. You can use all kinds of different accessory tables with it, including with a miter gauge to, you know, get a real nice square edge on it. Different size disc sanding disc. These are 12-inch. These are obviously 20-inch. These are really tiny ones that you can use either chuck mounted, small chuck, larger chuck, collet chuck. You know, you can mount them any variety of different ways. All little disc sanding attachments for the lathe. Great things to do. Drilling jigs. Really, the only commercial jig available was the one-way. These are shop-made jigs. I think this one's from Bruce Land and Paul Turner, I think. This is another one, kind of a unique design. These are just showing you some of the different things you can make. These are done with an index wheel. This one and this one is an index wheel. I think this one's an index wheel. These two are just random drilled holes, but God, just beautifully done. Absolutely gorgeous. But the one-way drill wizard works terrific for drilling those kinds of things. I used them in doing the lighthouse fence post holes. Worked like a charm. Really, really good. Shop-made fluting jigs. These are just taking a little trim router and mounting it in a carriage and using it on a base, the same base that you use for disc sanding. Other kinds of bases, you'll see a variety of different bases that John Lucas has made. John's a terrific turner and does a lot of videos now and everything, and you can see different types of assemblies that are made to do different projects. All shop-made assemblies here. These are some of the things that are done with those shop-made assemblies. They work like a charm. Candlesticks, you can see how delightful the candlesticks look with just a little bit of little fluting done to them, like a charm. A commercial variety, one of my favorite jigs, the Paul Howard fluting jig. This allows you to do some pretty unique kinds of things. You can see this is the jig I used to make this piece here, where you can arc the flutes that you're cutting in the rim of the bowl. That works terrifically. This is a straight base for it that you can make just straight in flutes or use to make like these kinds of flutes. This is the rotating base where the same assembly is simply mounted on a different base, and it curves, it rotates. There's a piece down here just holding it in place now, but you pull that out and it just rotates back and forth. And so you can arc it depending on how high you put the router on that assembly. You can either put it down here and get the arc, a little small arc, or you put it way up and you get a wider arc. Really nice. This is a picture of a spiraling jig. This was produced by Barry Price from Lancaster area woodturners. He's got a nice video on how to do that. I will tell you from the pictures, the spiraling effect that he produces with this is phenomenal. Really, really good. Well worth the time to watch it. If you're interested in doing a spiral flute, there was a commercial company that put one out. It was called Flute Master, and they made a version of this. It apparently wasn't successful. They went out of business, but they also made a Spiral Master that did this kind of thing. Also wasn't successful, but Barry's jig is fantastic. Strongly recommend taking a look at that video. Really neat idea. Wire burning rigs, everybody knows these. You know, they'll burn holes in it. Lots of different varieties available. I use different kinds of wires. These are the commercial ones. These are, I think, the KC wire burners over here. But this is a guitar string, and this is actually 14 gauge electrical wire. If you want to burn a really wide hole, it works remarkably well. Centering plates. These are those plates I was telling you about. You make up a disc, MDF disc, put it on a faceplate or faceplate ring, or just turn holes in it, turn a recess in it, and mount it on a chuck if you want. Any way you mount it, the best way is on a faceplate because it stays much more stable that way. But after you get that disc turned, and you're satisfied with, it's all nice and round on the outer edges and all, and you've glued this nice soft pad on, which is just shelf pad from Lowe's. Once that's done, and only after it's completely done, do you then put these different ring on it using different color pens. And this allows you then to center a piece. If you have a bowl that is hopefully still round, you can center it very, very accurately, just using as a reference point these different color rings. And don't make them all the same color because you'll get confused which one you're on. Make them all different colors, much easier to follow. This is a 20-inch, this is, I think, a 12-inch. So, if you do it this way, it's really easy to get a really, really good center. Pretty much the first time around, works like a charm. And if you want to make it a vacuum plate, you just drill a hole in the center of it. Then it's not only a centering plate, it's a vacuum plate as well. Works like a charm. Indexing plate and pin system. Again, these are a number of companies make these available. If you're doing evenly spaced holes, you can see all the different numbers of holes in a circle that you can get. Variety of different manufacturers make them. Chefware Kits is good. This one I love. Mike Oakner made this one with his laser burner. This is fantastic. I wish I had one of these machines to be able to do cool stuff like this. But anyway, you can custom make this yourself if you happen to have the same machine that Mike does. It's fantastic. Carving stands. Again, two primary carving stands out there. The Woodcut Pro Mount and Trent Bosch's carving stand. Scott Wishart did a great review of that recently. A link to his video is here. I strongly recommend you. That really shows all the capabilities of the woodcut system. It's terrific. And for those of you, it's worth exploring. If you want to see, this was a short-lived thing that Trent Bosch did. It was a pneumatic carving stand where everything was controlled by this foot pedal. You just stepped on the pedal and it released the arbor that this sits on, and you can adjust it any way you want. You release the pedal and it locks it in place. Apparently nobody bought it though, because he doesn't make it anymore. Sphere jigs, again, commercial varieties here. They're available from a variety of companies. Carter makes it, Chefware Kits makes it, Vermec makes it, although they do not have, I talked to their distribution people, they don't have a USA distributor now. You have to order it correctly from them. Don't be shocked by the prices on their website. They're Australian dollars, very different in US, about 2/3 as much in US dollars. And Scott also has a video of this as well, of the Vermec. Really good video explaining the great capability of this. It's a really sweet machine. And also a couple other links to other videos that explain different brands. If you hand turn them, this is just a little ghosting jig that I made, so you can see what needs to be turned away when you're turning a small sphere, if you're doing it by hand rather than with one of the jigs. Threading jigs, again, this is if you don't thread, using a threading tool. If you're not doing it yourself and using a machine to do it, a couple of different varieties here. There's a shop-made threading jig over here, and also Alan Stratton did one on as the wood turns. Anyway, different varieties of those available. Try to burn through these as quick as I can, folks. Bowl from Aboard Jigs. This is the commercial variety from Ron Brown's Best. This is a shop-made jig that's essentially the same kind of thing. These are the types of products that you can produce using the Bowl from Aboard Jigs. Work pretty well. Boring head cutter. I don't think a lot of people use these. Primarily used these days for making rings. The inside, cutting the insides of ring blanks. This is the video from Craft Supplies that shows how it's used to cut the inside of a ring blank. Very adjustable. If you mount it in the center here, this all moves just by Allen wrenches adjusting. This whole assembly here moves left and right. so you can adjust exactly how wide a hole it's going to cut here. You would want to move it this way, obviously, a little bit at a time. These are handy because you can adjust them like a thousandth of an inch at a time. Works really well to get an exact cut if you need to. This is for the outside of rings. The other side of the ring, a ring turning chuck and mandrel, different types of these. This is one type. This is another type. Again, if you're into ring turning, those work like a charm. Dedicated use chucks. These are all ladle chucks, different varieties of them. This is rubber chucking. These are shop made ladle chucks. This is a spatula chuck available from Rubber Chucky. Looks pretty cool. I haven't used that one, but it looks cool. Napkin ring chuck. These are cup chucks, again, used for making spheres, either like a large sphere. These are the large cup chucks that I use for turning soccer balls. And these cup chucks, the little small ones from Rubber Chucky, are made for small spheres. Lathe protectors for painting and finishing. I see a lot of people whose lathes look like God got sick all over them. There's a lot of stuff all over them. It's really easy to make some protectors to stop getting stuff all over, really, really expensive machines, folks. It's really handy to just make a really simple, this is just 1/4 inch MDF, and just put a board on the back of it, slap it down there, holds it in place. And this is to stop paint. If you're spinning paint, this stops it from redecorating your room. And this is all, and a lot of magnets. I use a ton of magnets around the lathe, and that sticks to the headstock to stop that from getting covered with stuff. But anyway, cross drilling mandrels, you'll see. I didn't have pictures to show how you actually drill the hole this way and this way, but you just chuck up the already squared up piece and drill those holes. And then once that piece, the square piece, is still going to be square, but it's going to have all those holes in it, you got to turn it around. Well, this is the device you use to actually turn it around. And these are the types of products that I make that you turn with this, and it works like a charm. Works good. Pen turning mandrel. This is the obvious stuff for those who turn pens. These are just some of the pens I've turned with. Whether it's this is the mandrel saver I was talking about, and that long 7mm shaft. You can either use this to turn multiple blanks at a time. You turn 2 at a time, or 1 at a time using this type of assembly. Bottle stopper and game call blank drive adapters. Again, these are the types of things you use, either threaded on this end, or this is the type of game call where you pre-drill a hole in it, like you see here, then you stick it on here. Once it's on there, and use an Allen wrench to tighten. It goes in here, or in this end here. You actually turn this one with a wrench, not an Allen wrench. This one uses an Allen wrench. This one uses just a regular wrench, I guess, or pliers to tighten that up, and then you turn it. It's held in place by friction. So. This is the long hole boring system. If you're going to do like a lamp or something, different companies make different types, and this is that counter bore drive center that you'd use when you're turning those. Again, that's the gun drill that you use for the same kind of purpose. Spindle comparator brackets. A lot of lathes don't have it. Those of us that have Powermatic lathes, our lathes come with a comparator bracket. This is just to mount the sample piece that you're trying to duplicate. It's not a duplicator. It just sits there, and it makes it convenient to take your measurements back and forth. Rather than have to turn around if you have it sitting someplace else. Just allows you to mount it in a place that's easy to put a reference spindle. This is another picture of the same kind of thing. You put your reference spindle here on the one that you're actually turning here. Not a lot of lathes has those, but some people build them into their lathes if they don't come from the factory that way. Spindle duplicators, again, hardly anybody uses those, but there are versions available from Rockler and Vega. This is a shop-made version from Bruce Lamb at Baltimore area wood turners. That's pretty cool, like that. Here are the wobble and off-center chucks, and these are kind of in ascending order of complexity. This is a wobble chuck from Sorby. This is kind of the bottom end of the wobble and off-center eccentric chuck market, if you will. It doesn't have a ton of capabilities, but just enough to give you a little bit of variety. This is Carl Jacobson's joiner off-center jig. Gives you a lot more variety than the wobble chuck. Carl, I think, is going to be demonstrating probably some of that. I'm not sure. Scott Mallon, if he's going to be demonstrating that, but anyway, that's sold by Carl now. And these are, again, increasing complexity, a little bit better than the joiner is the Axminster eccentric chuck. Has a few more options. available to it, and the most supposedly, I've not used this one, but supposedly the most elaborate one that's available is this Sorby, because you can mount it even on a screw chuck. Here gives you more capabilities to do different things in different directions. Or you can shop make an eccentric chuck, a whole ton of different types of these shop made eccentric chucks that are available. This one's called the Ducks Chuck, designed by Jim Duxbury, hence the name Ducks Chuck, which I love. Other videos from Mike Peace and Mike Walt on how to make their versions of eccentric chucks, and there's again a whole bunch of different varieties of shop made eccentric chucks available, but allow you to do some pretty elaborate looking little pendants and the like. Cool stuff. This is a product that just came out within the last couple of weeks, I guess. I'm not sure if it was probably announced or made available at the AAW symposium. I'm not sure, but it allows you to turn a perfect radius curved on shallow bowls or platters. Robust came out with that recently, and if that's something that appeals to you, there's now a product to allow you to do that. This is the really quick, cool stuff. A spindle center height gauge. Rob Wallace, who does the Gizmos and Gadgets presentation at each of the symposiums, recommended this several years ago, and I made one, and it works like a charm. You said that there are magnets on the bottom of this. It attaches to your lathe to keep it in place, and you put a rod in there that's exactly the height of your center point. And then if at some point when you don't have your spindle available to you because you got something else trucked on it, like this vase here, you need to know where the center point is. All you do is pull this thing out, slap it on the lathe, boom, you know exactly where dead center is. You don't have to mount anything in the tailstock to do the same thing. You just pull that out, throw it down, boom, instantly it's available. It's really handy. I don't use it a ton, but I do use it frequently. Handy to have. Again, I mentioned magnets on the lathe. I put magnets everywhere because it's a big hunk of metal, and I hang all my frequently used tools. I hang them everywhere. You know, you buy these Craftsman plates at Lowe's, slap those on the lathe, and you can stick all kinds of stuff to it. These are all the Allen wrenches that I use for all the different attachments that go on the lathe. You know, they're all stuck right there. I know right where they are. They don't go anywhere. Wrenches and everything gets calipers. You know, compasses, they all get stuck on magnets and works like a charm. Sanding blocks, again, that's what I use them for. I talked about those before, facing things off. They work great. Depth drills, everybody knows what depth drills are. Different varieties of them and different lengths. A couple video links on how to do those. Morse taper drills, you know, if you're doing a particular size and depth of hole repeatedly, you don't want to use a drill chuck. These tend to be more true than a drill chuck. A little more expensive if you're buying them one at a time, but depending on the volume that you're producing, you just slap those in the tailstock and away you go. You can drill to the heart's content, and they work like a charm. You can get them in almost any size imaginable, literally down to the 64th of an inch, in any 64th that you want. They're available from MSC and some other companies. Forstner Bits, everybody knows those. Again, keep in mind, these are bit extensions for Forstner Bits for drilling deep holes, but what happens when you add things to the main assembly, you're adding run out. So always keep that in mind. Faceplate center marker. This goes with that discussion we were having before on how do you mount faceplates. You know, once you've picked all the screws and everything else, how do you do it? This is a device that is sold by a couple of the different vendors. This one is from Lee Valley Tools. This one I think is Craft Supplies. It's just a device that fits down. You can buy them in different sizes. It's 1 1/4 by 8. This just fits in 1 1/4 opening, and it has this center point on it here that just mounts in the hole that you punched in the dead center, and it holds that faceplate exactly in place. This is the thorough approach to mounting it. It's an involved approach. It's the one I use particularly if I'm going to permanently mount a faceplate on something like a sanding disc. I go through all of those steps rather than the hurried approach, which is you just use this device to hold the faceplate in place and then you screw it down like a madman without pre-drilling the holes or countersanding or doing anything else that might interfere with it seating completely flat. You can do it this way. I don't. I do this rather anal retentive OCD type thorough approach, just because I want it to be as absolutely dead flat as I can get it to be. Your choice as to which one you want to do. spring punches for marking. This one, the red handle one I really like is from Cat's Moses Tools. He does a great job with some of the tools that he makes. Great to have. Morse taper cleaning tool, always good to keep your Morse tapers clean, clean them out periodically. This is currently available from a pen tool company. This one, I wasn't able to find a link to who has this one currently, but hopefully it's still out there someplace. Wood mallets, obviously we all use those in the shop. Never, ever, ever hit one of your drive centers when you're trying to mount it onto a blank. Never, ever hit it with a metal hammer. Always hit it with a wood mallet of some sort. All these lovely video links to turning wood mallets. Is an amazing array of artists out there doing it. This is just a simple little device I got from Amazon that I happen to use because I'm a visual learner and copier. I have no inherent artistic ability whatsoever, so I can't think of a nice design for a finial. I keep a notebook of finial sample pictures, and when I want to come up with one for a particular project, I pick one out of my sample book, fold it up and put it on this little magnetic sample holder that's magnetic, and it sits right on that comparator bracket that sits back there, holds it in place, and I copy it. And gee, it works great for stupid people like me who can't come up with their own ideas. I just copy it that way. So it works like a charm. Layout templates, everybody knows what these are. You can either buy these commercially or make versions of them yourself out of 1/4 inch. This is just 1/4 inch MDF, or make it out of plastic. Dean's Woodworking has a great video on how to make those. Tailstock ruler for setting calipers. I just stuck some leftover tape on the tailstock to set my calipers. I find it really handy to have tapes there in both SAE, imperial and metric. I can set calipers really easily. I don't have to hold the ruler at the same time. I just stick that on there and use it to set my calipers wherever I need it. So that's pretty much as wide as I ever use for any caliper setting. MT2 taper sizing jig, again, not something I use a whole lot, but every once in a while, get a good Mike P video on how to turn your own MT2 tapers and make your own jig. The measurements are all here if you want to. And this wrench is ground to exactly the widths of the thinnest end and the thickest end, and then you just taper between those. So if you want to make those for making a custom mandrel for a lamp puller, or needle case, or pill case, like Mike Peace does in the video, really handy to have. Centering and stubby bits. I think most people know these are great if you're only drilling a really short depth hole that they don't wander much at all. Really handy to have. Centering bits. A lot of people just use a skew and turn a little divot in there to do it. If you really want to be thorough, use a centering bit first, and it cuts a hole in such a way that the tip of the bit, it's always the tip that tends to wander when you first contact wood. And these centering bits are designed to make the first contact the outer edges of the bit rather than the center of the bit. So as it goes in, the first thing that will hit wood are the outer edges, and that stops it from wandering. So good idea to use those. I keep those magnet mounted at the front of the lathe and use those periodically. Here's the Banjo-Mounted dial indicator to check run out. I use this every once in a while just to check and see how things are going. You can actually check to see what the surface of your the outer edge of your bowl looks like if you're brave enough to do that. This I just showed you as a possibility to show what the differences are. Which one, if you're drilling or if you're doing anything with either a drill chuck, a regular 4-jaw chuck, or a collet chuck, which one would run more true? And I took this same piece and mounted this in all 3 of these. Not the same pictures, obviously, but I mounted the same one in all 3. Which one do you think was the most true? It was obviously the collet chuck, by far the most true, because there's so many moving parts in this and in this, and very few moving parts in this. And it was almost dead on with almost 0 movement in the collet chuck, which is why I love collet chucks. It worked like a charm. Thin wrench set I use for sizing small tenons and small spindle diameters. Really handy, and they don't cost much, really cheap. So if you're trying to size something repeatedly, you don't have to measure it periodically. These things are sized pretty accurately, fortunately. And I just use those as you're turning. You size it with that. It works like a charm. Double-sided turner's tape, all kinds of different varieties. We all use different types. And this is the last page. stabilizing your lathe, lots of different ways to do it. I did what's called a sandbox stretcher between the two legs. This is filled with 150 pounds of sand. Then I put drawers in above it to hold more chucks and stuff. But you can do other things. You can pile sand this way. You can bolt it to the floor like this, or do what any of these folks do. All kinds of different methods to stabilize the lathe. It just helps to keep it a little steadier if you're turning off balance things. So that's it. There's my contact information. We'll come back to that in a minute. But here are the resource pages. All the links to the different vendors that we have, and contact information for some of the more unique vendors that you might want to chat with personally by email. They're happy to chat with you. But anyway, all those contacts. And there's my contact information. If anybody wants to email me, we're going to make the PDF of this available to everybody. Or if you really want a copy of it, I'm happy to email it to you. I have an emailable size version of it that I can email out. Just send me an email and I'm happy to email it right out to you. No problem whatsoever.